Once upon a time in a great forest there lived a hare and a tortoise. Tortoise was slow with everything he did. He sometimes ate his breakfast so slowly that it was almost time for lunch before he had finished. He kept his house clean and neat, but he did it at his own pace, very slowly. Hare, on the other hand, was quick as a wink in all that he did. He would be up in the morning, finished with his breakfast, and going for an early walk in the forest before Tortoise had gotten out of bed. Hare could not imagine how Tortoise could stand to be so slow all the time. Tortoise lived next door to his good friend Squirrel. Squirrel had a cozy little home high up in an old oak tree. She loved to spend her time scurrying around. She thought it was fun to jump from branch to branch. Squirrel, like Hare, wondered how Tortoise could always be so slow. Hare lived near his good friend Owl, who was not nearly as quick as Hare. In fact, he spent a lot of his time sleeping. But Owl was a very wise and good neighbor. Sometimes he thought to himself, "Hare always seems to be rushing somewhere in a hurry. I wonder if he ever slows down." Every afternoon when the weather was nice, Tortoise would gather up his paints and brushes and go out into the woods. Tortoise loved to paint pictures of the flowers and trees and the stream near his house. He worked slowly, but his pictures were beautiful. Hare thought painting a picture was not at all exciting. "What a dull fellow Tortoise is," he said. Hare had the most fun leaping about the forest. He liked to visit his friends, rushing from house to house. Wherever he went, he always ran very, very fast. There was just one problem. Hare was sure that he was the smartest, fastest, most handsome animal in the whole forest, and he never failed to tell his friends how splendid he was. "I think I look especially fine today," he would say to himself as he stood in front of his mirror. Tortoise never bragged about himself. He knew that he was not particularly handsome, and that he was very slow, but he did not mind. He was happy to spend his time working hard, painting his beautiful pictures at his very slow pace. One day Tortoise was sitting beside the stream painting a picture of all the pretty wildflowers on its bank. Hare came up and said, "You are such a slowpoke, Tortoise. You've been working on the same picture all week." "I'm not so very slow," protested Tortoise. "Silly fellow," said Hare, "you're so slow that I could beat you at anything you can name. Just name something and I'll win." "All right," said Tortoise. "How about a race?" What an idea! Hare laughed and laughed at the thought of running a race with Tortoise. Hare laughed so hard he thought he would explode. Word of the race spread quickly through the forest. All the animals were talking about how Tortoise had boldly challenged Hare. What was Tortoise thinking? Why did he do such a thing? They wondered. Even Squirrel had to laugh at the idea of Tortoise racing Hare. Squirrel hurried down her tree and went over to tell Owl the exciting news. When Owl heard about the big race, he blinked his eyes slowly and said in his deep, wise voice, "I am not so sure that Hare will win. You never can tell what is going to happen." On the day of the big race, all the animals in the forest gathered at the starting line. Skunk and Chipmunk had been busy laying out the course for the race. Bear had a banner to mark the finish line. Squirrel had a bunch of balloons she was giving to the animals in the crowd. Fox was to be the judge. "If the race is close, I will say who is the winner, he declared. Don't worry, said Hare. You won't have a problem. I will be so far ahead there will be no doubt about who is the winner of this race. Tortoise and Hare stepped up to the starting line. Tortoise looked nervous when he saw all the animals. Hare smiled and waved to the crowd. He could hardly wait to show Tortoise a thing or two about running a race. Fox looked at both runners. He shouted, "Get ready! Get set! Go!" The race was on. Hare dashed across the starting line. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared over the first hill. "Oh dear," said Squirrel to herself. "There goes Hare, out of sight already. Poor Tortoise hasn't even started." Sure enough, Tortoise was just beginning to climb the steep path, very slowly. Hare ran and ran until he was sure he would win. "This isn't even a race," he said to himself. "I think I'll lie down and rest a bit. Then I'll finish and still have plenty of time to spare. There's no way that Slowpoke will ever catch up with me." So Hare lay down under a shady tree and soon fell asleep. Suddenly Hare awoke with a start. He could hear cheering. He leaped to his feet and began running as fast as his long legs would carry him. But when he saw the finish line of the race, he could not believe his eyes. Tortoise was about to win the race. Hare could not believe it. Tortoise was crossing the finish line. The crowd cheered and cheered. They ran to the finish line to congratulate Tortoise. The wise owl blinked his eyes and said what all the other animals were thinking. Slow and steady wins the race.